Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, I will be giving you information about sports from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Sports. That basically works not only for Twitter but also for Instagram. But what we will do is we'll go to the headlines first. Yes, from the world of Premier League, Chelsea actually managed to win against Everton 2-0. We'll surely be talking about that. And from the world of golf, Bryson DeChambeau is grateful to Tiger Woods for helping him win Arnold Palmer Invitation. And from the world of tennis, Djokovic actually sets a new landmark for 311-week victory as world number one on Monday, 1 week more than Roger Federer. From the world of Olympics, Thomas Bach will be re-elected unopposed for a second term as Olympic chief this week, just 5 months before the opening ceremony, which was delayed due to COVID-19. Yes, so those were the basic headlines, and not to forget that we've been discussing Premier League and its standing. Not only that, there have been super major upsets, and there has a lot of progress as well. When we talk about progress, obviously we'll be talking about Chelsea's progress so far since Thomas Tuchel actually joined in as their lead manager. But initially they were really going down, and they eventually won against Everton and they came up to a point on their perfect standing. But to discuss all of this, obviously we wanted someone who has that wisdom, who can actually impart that wisdom to us. Gabriel Sutton actually joins us from Birmingham, and he's basically a super famous person with regards to his experience on interacting with different people, the different various clubs, and he always writes about them. He's been the judge at the FCA, which is the Football Content Award in 2020, and he actually won the competition as a sole owner of the website The Football Lab in 2016. Gabriel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Salam alaikum.
Walsam. Thank you very much for being with us on the show. So Gabriel, we'll start off with the current Premier League standings, but before that we'll talk about the last match which happened, which is obviously Chelsea winning against Everton. So what is your take on that victory? Because looking back into Chelsea's performance with Frank Lampard and then Thomas Tuchel joining in, taking the team into a whole new horizon and now being in the top four.
Yeah, it's been an incredible turnaround for them under Thomas Tuchel, hasn't it? I think that one of the main issues for Frank Lampard, he got them into Chelsea into the top four last season when they weren't able to spend. But when they've been able to invest big money, they signed Mendy, they signed Werner, they signed Havertz, not really been able to get the best out of their top players. And I think there was a run over the winter period that really cost Frank Lampard. And as much as there's an element of sentiment there, because Frank Lampard's obviously a Chelsea legend, right. Chelsea are a very ruthless club where you're expected to perform well. And I think they've made the right decision in appointing Thomas Tuchel. Some of the football they've played under him has been very smooth, with Jorginho at the centre of things in midfield, and they got pace in attack with Hudson-Odoi and Werner, and Havertz is starting to find form. So it's been a really impressive turnaround, and I think ultimately Tuchel's got the credentials to get the best out of this expensive squad.
Right, but if we look back into Tuchel's performance, obviously he was with the PSG. For him stepping out of the PSG and then Chelsea managing to say goodbye and say respects or pay their respects to Frank Lampard, and then having him on board, how was the journey, not only for Frank Lampard himself, but if you look back, Frank Lampard has been a phenomenal footballer, but obviously there are times when you need to impart that knowledge, the in-depth knowledge as a coach or as a head coach. How do you see the journey of Thomas Tuchel to begin with, and then obviously the situation in which Frank Lampard actually came down?
Well, I think with Lampard, he'd had one season at Derby County in the Championship, and he got Derby into the top six, which was a decent job, but it wasn't like an outstanding overperformance because Derby had been in promotion contention for a lot of previous seasons. So I think certainly the sentiment of appointing Lampard appealed to Chelsea at a time where they weren't able to spend very much, and he did a good job in his first season. But I think at the same time it probably all happened very quickly for him. And you look at Thomas Tuchel, Did a good job at Dortmund, implemented a kind of a steady possession-based style after replacing Jurgen Klopp, and
Right.
then got PSG to the Champions League final last season. So he's got the credentials. He's managed in the Champions League for many years, and I just think that, yeah, he's got the nous to take Chelsea on. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they won the Premier League next season. I've been that impressed with them since Tuchel came in.
Right. And that is definitely true. But, if we think about how Manchester City actually managed to come to a point of being on fire and no return, but then the fire came down to a halt after the 21 consecutive victories, and then Manchester United actually stepping in and breaking that cycle. How was that match for you?
Well, fantastic result for Manchester United. You'd have to say that the one thing Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has in his favour as Red Devils boss is that he's got an excellent record against Pep Guardiola and Manchester City, which certainly stacks in his favour. It was a result that took United second. And what I would like to highlight is the performance of Luke Shaw. I think he certainly wasn't an instant hit at Manchester United, was he? He was affected quite a lot by injuries in his first few seasons, but this year he seems to have found some consistency, really, and put in some great displays at left back. And I think he was definitely probably man of the match for them at Crystal Palace last Wednesday, and I think he was probably the star performer at City as well.
So right now, everybody's struggling. All the clubs are actually struggling to be in the top four. What do you predict? Because we have been seeing a lot of upsets, but then there are a lot of turn of events as well. If you take it that way, a lot of teams are actually trying. They want them to be on the top four because they all know, with regards to the standing, that it's going to be technically very hard to get rid of or get hold of the first place to begin with. So all of them want to be on the top four. But if we talk about Liverpool in particular, people were having a lot of hopes with Liverpool, but slowly and gradually we've seen a lot of downfall in terms of Liverpool's performance. Initially, when Manchester City was having its top-notch performance, I think the 18th victory or the 19th victory, I remember, everybody was still having hopes, and even Liverpool fans were having hopes that somehow Liverpool would manage to come up and be in the top four. How do you see that also impacting in the future?
Yeah, I don't think Liverpool will finish in the top four. I think that the run that they're on is appalling, really. I think it's 5 consecutive home defeats now. They're struggling to score goals. It feels like the front three needs breaking up, and I'm not sure they've necessarily got the personnel to find long-term replacements for their key performers like Mane, like Salah, like Firmino, and I think that's a massive problem for Jurgen Klopp on top of the injuries and the personal issues that he's facing. I think this season could be a write-off for Liverpool. I think obviously City, United and Chelsea are very likely to finish in the top four. I think if there is one team that's going to drop out, it could be Leicester, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the current top four stays as it is.
Right. So you predict that somehow that Leicester will not be able to come to that point of being top four. If not Leicester City, who do you think, which team deserves or you think will struggle to get there in the top four?
It's a good question. Tottenham, I think you've got to look at are starting to find some form under Jose Mourinho. I think they've won their last 3 now. Everton look very much revitalised under Carlo Ancelotti. They're a club with aspirations of breaking into English football's elite. They've tried to do that for the last few years under Farhad Moshiri's regime. They've not quite done it with the investment that they've had. But I think Carlo Ancelotti, they've got a good manager there, and he's certainly taken them forward. So they've got some excellent players like Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison and lots of players like that. So I think if there's one team that's going to make the gap, then I think possibly Everton.
Everton. But how about the last match of Everton that we just saw? Because before that they had like 3 consecutive victories. But then Chelsea came up, and Chelsea with Thomas Tuchel came up. So how do you see that impacting the whole situation, the whole standing?
Well, I would say that although Chelsea are only 4th in the table, I would actually put them in a similar category to Manchester City at the moment,
right,
just because of the way they're playing under Thomas Tuchel. I just think that they're a different kettle of fish, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them put together a long winning streak, not unlike the one Man City have had. So I think Chelsea are a different proposition.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to judge Everton too harshly on that.
Right.
I think that they've made strides. You look at players like Ben Godfrey's been an excellent pickup from Norwich. They've got some really good players in attack, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm a big fan of Everton, and I think they've made a lot of progress under Ancelotti.
Interesting. So let's talk about, so you're basically an expert when it comes to obviously the Championship League. So let's talk about that, because that's like the core competency that you would want to shed knowledge upon.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the Championship because it's such an unpredictable division, really. And I think if you look at the promotion race for automatic promotion to the Premier League, Norwich are obviously 10 points clear at the top, and they've got a player in Emi Buendia who's an Argentinian. I think he could be world class, that lad. I think I'm a massive fan of him. And then just below that, you've got kind of three teams in Watford, Swansea and Brentford who are all pushing to finish in that top two. So that's very exciting. And then you've got Barnsley in sixth, who have one of the division's lowest budget, and thanks to excellent recruitment and a fantastic high-pressing, aggressive style of football, they're now in the top six for the first time since 2007. So lots of exciting things going on in the Championship.
Right. That's an interesting take. I would want to discuss one important factor which obviously all the sports have been affected by, which is the situation of COVID-19, not only in obviously the Champions League, but also the Premier League. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that I don't feel like COVID has affected the Premier League as much as maybe it's affected the lower divisions in England, because of course the Premier League is a global brand. I think the fact that you yourselves have a massive interest in Pakistan shows that. So I think that there's so much money in the Premier League in terms of TV deals that I think the absence of fans hasn't affected the quality of the league so much. I think lower down the football pyramid, clubs are far more reliant on gate income, and I think that's where COVID has had a much bigger effect. And that's why I want to encourage people to support their local clubs, where in any sport really, because I think it's important that we keep that connection to our communities, because football clubs, local football clubs that represent their towns and their villages, they play a massive part in the general well-being of that area. So I think COVID, lower down divisions, has had a massive impact.
For the players who have actually been through the COVID-19 situation, how is the comeback from their end? How do you see that impacting them as a sportsman?
Yeah, it's difficult, certainly, and certainly my thoughts are with every footballer who has been affected by COVID. It's a horrible thing to have to go through. There have been stories of players who have picked up COVID and then taken some time to quarantine themselves and then taken tests and recovered reasonably well. So I think that it's important that, luckily, I think for footballers, they're in a position where they can sort of distance themselves from other people. They're not living in sort of crowded houses, so they've been able to take that time away and recover from the illness. But certainly my thoughts go out to anyone who's been affected by COVID.
Thank you very much, Gabriel Sutton, for being a part of the show and discussing the insights, not only on English Premier League, but also in the Champions League. Thank you very much.
Shukriya.
So that was basically the update and the details with regards to obviously when Gabriel actually put in his input with regards to not only the Premier League but also the Champions League. But anyways, we'll take a quick break, and once we're back, we'll follow up with the next guest. See you guys after the break. And welcome back. Yes, before the break, we were discussing the world of Premier League, and it was pretty intense, in-depth analysis on the standings, how it really should be. But anyways, we need to switch over to the next news, and which is going to be obviously the golf thing. Yes, we need to talk about golf and its progress. So far, so good. And yes, to discuss this, we have with us our amateur champion, Umar Khokar. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Anyways, Umar, we'll go on to the Arnold Palmer Invitational win. How actually it came up to a point for DeChambeau to win against Lee Westwood. So it was a pretty close call. and then winning against him at that very close call, and then having Tiger Woods reaching out to him with a thanks. How do you see that journey?
Well, first of all, congratulations to Bryson DeChambeau on winning the Arnold Palmer Invitational Golf Tournament.
Right.
And yes, again, it was a very close match against the Lee Westwood,
Right.
who's kind of a European veteran guy.
Right.
And he won the European Tour season last year.
Right.
And it was a very close match. And yes, then again, DeChambeau told everybody at the media that he got a text message from Tiger Woods and they exchanged words. And as you know, Tiger Woods have won the Arnold Palmer 8 times.
Right.
So he really know the course and how the way it played.
Right.
So it was really encouraging for DeChambeau just to hear from Tiger Woods, and we all know he's struggling, and we all are praying for a faster recovery for him.
Yes, with regards to, obviously, as you mentioned, 8-time winner, and initially we were also discussing the recovery perspective of Tiger Woods, but him keeping himself fit is probably why he's still out there on the road to a quicker recovery, right?
Well, definitely. He is one of the guys who's mentally very strong.
Right.
And if you ask me, I think he'll be back.
Right.
Maybe after 1 year or 2 years, but it's very critical to say if he's going to be back or not, because he needs to go through proper rehab and proper post-surgery and everything else.
Right. So let's talk about DeChambeau himself. Because to me, from how I see it, obviously Tiger Woods winning this championship like 8 times, as you mentioned, and then DeChambeau reaching out, and Tiger was actually reaching out with a congratulation message to him, which definitely means for DeChambeau, Tiger Woods would definitely be a mentor.
Well, definitely. There are a lot of similarities between Tiger Woods and DeChambeau, because
Right.
Tiger Woods is one of the players who changed his golf swing and technique 4 to 5 times. So as a golfer, it's not easy to change your swing and technique.
Right.
And we have seen DeChambeau do the physical transition, and he totally changed his swing.
Right.
And now as he is again winning with the new changed swing, so and then again the work ethic of DeChambeau is amazing, because he's a very hardworking guy,
Right.
just like Tiger Woods. So definitely Tiger Woods is mentor for DeChambeau.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Lee Westwood himself. Lee Westwood himself is, another legend out there. So how close was this game? Because everybody was just one shot away for that victory. Obviously, it's technically very hard, but you can define it more like an athlete as a golfer. How do you see that small one-shot victory?
Well, one-shot victory is like playing over 72 holes. It's something that he could have saved anywhere in all those 4 rounds.
Right.
But it was a very close battle between Lee Westwood and DeChambeau on the last day.
Right.
And just for DeChambeau to win it against Lee Westwood, and Lee Westwood really praising the way DeChambeau played out there. And DeChambeau is a complete golfer. Not only he hits long golf shot off the tee, but he's really good with his putting, and he made some crucial putts like on the 11th.
Right.
And then obviously dropping a 5-6 footer on the last hole, because he did not want to go on a playoff against Lee Westwood.
Right.
Because going on a playoff means it's like a sudden death, like a penalty shootout in
Right.
football, like a super over in cricket.
Interesting.
So after the tournament finished, DeChambeau said that I did not want to go on a playoff with Lee Westwood.
Right,
Because
right.
that's where all the pressure comes in.
I absolutely agree, and I'm sure the adrenaline rush that they'd be facing. But anyways, definitely it was a good win, like you mentioned with regards to the close call. Let's go to WGC, which kind of took place before this, and Colin Morikawa actually managed to win that. How did you see the WGC in terms of the golfing experience?
Well, WGC is one of the biggest golf tournament if we take out the 4 major golf tournaments of golf.
Right.
And for Colin Morikawa winning it, he's proving that he is a world-class golfer. And just to win at the age of 25, it was his first WGC win. So I think that is something really gives him a lot of boost for the rest of the season, and just give him realization that he's out there and he's competing with these guys and he's winning.
Right. And what about the genesis that actually took place? Obviously, it was Tiger Woods was hosting the event, and I think after that came his accident, the tragic situation for Tiger Woods himself. But how did you see the genesis shape up as well?
Well, Max Homa won the Genesis Open, who's out there on the tour for quite a few years, and he grew up in the same city where the Genesis has been happening, and he always wanted to get a chance to meet Tiger Woods.
Right.
And for him just to win a tournament and being
Hosted by Tiger Woods.
hosted by Tiger Woods,
Definitely an honor, I'm sure.
that was something like, for him, that was like a dream come true. And you see, this is the beauty of golf, that every week there's a new winner.
Right.
Because 120 golfers are competing every week, and anybody can win at any time.
So it's all about consistency, if I'm not wrong. For golfer, as we've discussed this earlier as well, is equally as athletic he needs to be to prove their worth, right?
Well, yeah, definitely week in, week out. It's very important for them to stay in the touch, and definitely it's very important to stay in top 5, top 10. Definitely winning is like a cherry on the top, but for all these golfers, it's very important for them to compete and make sure they're in the mix over the weekend.
Right. So just tell us about, is there any current tournament that is that us in Pakistan can look out for in terms of golf?
Well, definitely there are a lot of tournaments that are happening in Pakistan. Like one of the tournament over the weekend is happening in Multan.
Right.
Then it will be followed by another tournament in Mangla Golf Club.
Nice.
Then there's going to be one in Karachi, and then there's going to be one in Pindi. So as we know, Ramadan is approaching, and it's in the next month.
Right.
So all the tournaments are happening almost every week, because there's a huge break in Ramadan, and then there's the summer. So yeah, there are a lot of tournaments happening in Pakistan, and I think all the Pakistani golfers are very fortunate to see the golf tournaments happening due to the current situation of COVID and everything. Yeah.
So the COVID impact, we've discussed this earlier as well. Has that impact come down to a threshold that we can obviously, it's more of an open sport. You still have those social distancing protocols and stuff. Any bigger tournament? I mean, like you've discussed a few tournaments. Which is the biggest one that's coming in Pakistan's way?
Well, I think the tournament that is going to happen in Rawalpindi Golf Club, Chief of Army Staff, that is going to be one of the biggest tournament of the country.
Right.
And yes, as you said, it's a sport in which there's no physical contact between the players.
Right.
So all the tournaments happen with proper SOPs and everything, and we're very glad all the players and the participants really follow those SOPs. So that's why we're glad that all the tournaments are happening.
Interesting. So we've generally discussed, obviously, in terms of Tiger Woods' recovery. Let's do a quick wrap on that so that I can follow up with the further news. How do you see Tiger Woods' recovery going so far? Obviously, him texting DeChambeau, it shows that his will is there, his mental capacity is there to recover. How do you see him back on the field?
Well, for Tiger Woods, texting DeChambeau means that he's following all the golf tournaments.
Right.
He's maybe looking at all the tournaments, he's following them.
Right.
So that means a lot of faster recovery, because he is Tiger Woods.
Of course.
He wants to be out there playing with all these great golfers,
Right.
and obviously he wants to win. So he's one of the guy. I think he's not that old, but still, and one of the main reason is that he's gone through a lot of surgeries.
Right. He was already unwell.
Yeah, because he got his 5th back surgery.
Wow.
So I think he's pretty much used to all the recovery and everything, and he's one of the guys who's mentally strong, and I think he believes in patience.
Right.
So let's see when he's going to come back. But
anyways, great. That's majorly with regards to the world of golf. Anyways, Umar, once again, thank you for being with us and discussing the in-depth analysis of golf. We surely love to have you on the show all the time. And I'll switch over to more of the news. But anyways, this was Umar discussing the world of golf and how Tiger Woods still recovering, and obviously with regards to DeChambeau's victory. And not only that, we've talked about Genesis, we've talked about WGC and all the tournaments that took place. Anyways, we'll go into the world of tennis. Yes, let's talk about Djokovic. Djokovic is still leading the 311th week mark as #1. Not to forget that Roger Federer's, the tie-up was 310 weeks, but it is slowly and gradually going up for him. How long can he sustain? The last major title that he won was his 18th title, which was in the Australian Open in February. But he still is continuing that landmark, and we're happy to see him survive and take it further ahead. But anyways, that was from the world of tennis. Yes, we'll slowly and gradually switch over to Olympics. Yes, Olympics. All right, Thomas Bach is to be re-elected unopposed for a second term in Olympics this week. Olympics has been a major issue with regards to the COVID-19 situation. Not to forget that IOC actually took the decision to postpone Olympics 2020 because of COVID-19. And in between, the whole situation was happening, and they were not really moving it further ahead, but they managed to do so. Why? Because the COVID-19 took it to another level. And during those times, I remember Australian Open was also underway, which was tricky. But then there was so much of debate that, eventually now it has come up to a point of being postponed. And Bach has been also an international committee member since 1991. Let's hope we get to hear some updated news with regards to the happenings of Olympics. But anyways, this was the major updates with regards to sports from all across the globe. You guys can reach out to us on our social media handle, which is @ Indus News Sports. That is for Twitter and Instagram. Till then, take good care of yourself, and bye-bye.